From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana, Siddiqui. First, the headlines. Fight for justice is ongoing 1 year after Tulsa Massacre Centennial. 9 killed in 14 mass shootings during Memorial Day weekend in the U.S. Kazakhstan honors millions who died in the Great Famine. Israel-UAE signed free trade agreement. Canada introduces legislation to ban sale and import of handguns. Ultra-modern mosque commissioned in Ghana. Our top story tonight. Yesterday was the 101st anniversary of the 1921 Tulsa, Oklahoma race massacre. On May 31, 1921, a white mob attacked and destroyed Tulsa's thriving African-American Greenwood business district. During the deadly rampage, the mob burned more than 1,000 homes and looted hundreds of others. The attack lasted until June 1st. While the anniversary may not have garnered national and international attention the way its centennial did last year, leaders say it was no less significant. State Representative Regina Goodwin, a Tulsa Democrat, said the fight for justice is ongoing. Tulsa Mayor G.T. Bynum said the centennial was going to be an inflection point, not a finish line. They and other Tulsans agree important goals and mileposts have been reached in 101 years. Oklahomans commemorated the anniversary with many events over the holiday weekend this year. A candlelight vigil was held in honor of the victims of the massacre. The 2021 centennial of the massacre came at the end of a tumultuous 15-month period. That included global protests sparked by the murder of George Floyd and the COVID-19 pandemic. It was also mired in controversy while the nation was reeling from the 2020 presidential election and the January 6 Capitol attack. A special in-depth analysis coming up later tonight in our show, so keep watching Muslim News. U.S. Supreme Court clerks may be required to release personal phone records as the investigation into who leaked the Roe v. Wade draft opinion widens. CNN reported the possible mandated release of private cell phone records and signed affidavits. As a result, some clerks could be considering retaining legal counsel. The leaked draft on the landmark abortion ruling was published first by Politico on May 2nd. It sparked national outrage as it showed the court's conservative majority seemed prepared to roll back federal abortion protections. Since then, the investigation into who leaked the draft has intensified. Chief Justice John Roberts met with the clerks in a group. It is unclear whether individual interviews have been conducted. The investigation is being led by the court's marshal, Gail Curley. On Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden rebuffed reports that his administration is preparing to send advanced long-range rocket systems to Ukraine. Biden denied any such weapons deal while speaking with reporters at the White House. Just days before, multiple reports cited administration officials saying the U.S. is preparing to send new weapons to Ukraine, including multiple launch rocket systems. CNN reported American MLRS can rain rockets hundreds of miles away beyond Ukraine's current weapons capabilities. Ukrainians say it would be a game changer in that nation's fight against Russia. The U.S. has been stepping up its assistance to Ukraine since the war began February 24th. So far, the Biden administration has avoided any move that might cause a confrontation with Russia. 9 people were killed and 63 injured in mass shootings during Memorial Day weekend in the U.S., according to data released Tuesday. The Gun Violence Archive Research Group tracked 14 mass shootings during the 3-day weekend in 11 states. Those include California, Florida, Illinois, Michigan, and Texas. The group tallied nearly 18,000 gun violence-related deaths so far this year. Close to 10,000 of those have been ruled suicides. In the first 5 months of 2022, the group cataloged 230 mass shootings, including 11 mass murders in 34 states and in Washington, D.C. On Friday, a UK Muslim girl's hijab was yanked off in a racially aggravated assault at a bus stop, police said. The 16-year-old was headed to school for an exam in the town of Plymouth in southwest England when she was approached by a woman outside a Christian center. Devon and Cornwall police said the woman, believed to be 18 or 19, was arguing on her cell phone a few seats away from the victim just before the incident. When the call ended, the woman is believed to have angrily turned on the girl, saying, "What's your problem?" The girl told police without provocation the woman tried to punch her, but missed before pulling her hijab from her head. A witness saw the girl was upset and frightened and accompanied her on the bus to ensure she got to school safely. On Tuesday, Kazakhstan commemorated the death of more than 5 million Kazakhs from famine during the Soviet era in the first half of the 20th century. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev paid his respects to the victims at an event in the capital Nur Sultan before a monument symbolizing the famine of 1932 and 33. Tokayev also visited the Hazrat Sultan Mosque and listened to a recitation of the Quran in memory of those who lost their lives. Since 1997, May 31st has been observed as a day to remember the victims of political oppression, exile, and starvation. That includes Kazakhs who died amid political oppression and policies that led to starvation under Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. An ultra-modern mosque has been commissioned in the city of Tamale in Ghana to help spread Islam and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad. Named Masjidul Hidayah, it will have auxiliary facilities including a one-story school building, an office complex, IT labs, washrooms, and a car park. Islamic scholar and Dawah Academy Executive Director Sheikh Ibrahim Afazi spoke during a short ceremony on May 20th to commission the mosque. He urged Muslims to be loving and tolerant of people of different faiths. He said it took love and tolerance for Islam's final prophet Muhammad to invite people of different faiths to the religion. On Tuesday, Palestinian resistance group Hamas refused to commit to calm amid Israel's rising and ongoing violence in occupied East Jerusalem. Hamas spokesman Hazem Qasim told Anadolu Agency the group has rejected mediators seeking pledges from Hamas on avoiding escalation. He said there cannot be calm when the Israeli occupation continues its aggression. Qasim said his group can't tolerate any aggression on holy sites. Tensions have been mounting across the Palestinian territories in the wake of a controversial flag march by Israeli settlers through East Jerusalem. Participants chanted nationalistic slogans, with some screaming "Death to Arabs" as they marched through neighborhoods. Daily Israeli settler incursions into the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex have also added fuel to the fire. Details about the free trade agreement between Israel and the UAE after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Billboards are popping up all over the country with an...
Our neighbors don't realize that Muslims are absolutely opposed to ISIS.
Salam. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I'm an imam in Chicago.
16 shots! No me!
No justice!
No me!
So how do we bring up the energy which can really have an impact on the world? You need to build bridges of understanding among people, and we need to have America moving forward. That lesson learned have brought the strength of humanity to America, which is the diversity.
Mujahid Talks, only on Muslim Network TV. Faithfully connected.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World.
Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah, let's explore.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. On Tuesday, Israel signed a free trade agreement with the United Arab Emirates, the first of its kind with an Arab country. Under the deal, customs duties between Israel and the UAE will be eliminated on 96% of products, including food, agriculture, cosmetics, medical equipment, and medicine. In September 2020, the UAE and Israel signed a U.S.-sponsored deal normalizing relations called the Abraham Accords. They include 3 other Arab states, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. Since then, the UAE and Israel have exchanged visits by senior officials and signed dozens of bilateral agreements, including for investment, banking, and tourism. In related news, former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan said while he was in power, there was a lot of pressure on his government to accept Israel as a sovereign state. This was amid U.S.-brokered efforts that later led to the signing of the Abraham Accords by some Muslim countries. Khan said, "We were sent a message that you should think about your country." The ousted prime minister did not reveal who sent that message. Khan told journalists a U.S.-influenced lobby wants Muslim states to accept Israel. His comments came as Israeli President Isaac Herzog said he had an amazing experience meeting a delegation last month made up primarily of Pakistani expatriates in the U.S. A Pakistani Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman categorically rejected the notion of any delegation from Pakistan visiting Israel. He stressed Pakistan's position on the Palestinian issue was clear and there was no change in it. The Islamic Development Bank will host its annual meeting in Egypt's Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh later this week. The 4-day meeting starts Wednesday. It will be attended by ministers from 57 member countries and representatives of Islamic banks and financial institutions. Its theme is Beyond Recovery, Resilience and Sustainability. The meeting will explore several topics, including digitalization, climate finance, and fintech. On Monday, Canada's federal government introduced legislation that would implement stronger gun control. The National Freeze legislation will ban people's ability to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in Canada. It will also address gun violence associated with domestic violence, gender-based violence, and self-harm by creating a red flag provision that would enable courts to confiscate guns from people considered a danger to themselves or others. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau introduced the new legislation, which would be the strongest gun reform bill in more than 4 decades. Trudeau also discussed regulations his government already introduced, including a ban on assault-style weapons. Canada's House of Commons and Senate need to pass the latest gun legislation before it becomes law. An Afghan NGO has organized a mobile educational program to tour remote areas of Afghanistan. Pen Path Civil Society gives lessons and library books to children who might otherwise be starved of any opportunity to learn. The mobile library includes books on history and geography, as well as children's fiction in Pashto and Dari. This has become even more crucial as the ruling Taliban closed girls' secondary schools at the end of March. Matiullah Wissa, head of Pen Path Civil Society, said the initiative will be expanded to all districts nationwide except Kandahar, where there are no schools. Wissa founded the mobile program with his brother Ataullah Wissa in 2009 with the aim of fighting illiteracy in Afghanistan. The country is facing a humanitarian crisis after the withdrawal of foreign troops last August and the fall of the U.S.-backed Kabul government. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Imam Malik Mujahid in Chicago. Just like you, I was moved by that Allahu Akbar lady. She stood her ground, fearful of none, for her hijab and for her education. Sisters and brothers, Indian Muslims are facing a genocide. India does not care for Muslim protesting, but it does care for the world opinion. Therefore, we must push the United Nations. The UN has a responsibility to protect. They must prevent genocide. Please sign this UN petition now. Get others to sign. It will help. Trust me, it will help. We need 1 million signatures, brothers and sisters. Please sign now.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back. To discuss the anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, let's go to Edward Ahmed Mitchell. Over to you, Edward.
Thank you, Samana. And now we move to a discussion of an important historical event, something that too many Americans still have never heard of, the Tulsa Race Massacre, a horrific incident in which white residents of Tulsa, Oklahoma massacred a countless number of African-American residents of Tulsa, destroying untold amount of wealth in addition to lives lost. This happened almost exactly 101 years ago, and today we're going to discuss the incident, why so many people don't know about it, what happened on the Centennial, the anniversary last year, and what can be done to achieve justice and awareness about this important moment in American history. To discuss this important issue, I'd like to welcome on our special guest, Brother Quraysh Ali Lansana, who is a professor and writer-in-resident at Oklahoma State University, Tulsa. He is the acting director of the Center for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. How are you doing today?
I am well today, brethren. How are you?
I'm well, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate your time and you sharing your expertise with us. So let me first ask you a question that is beneath you, but is important because, as I mentioned, so many people still don't know what happened. Can you just give our viewers a little rundown of what the Tulsa Race Massacre was? What happened 101 years ago?
Sure, it's a big story. I'll try and make it as succinct as possible. So the popular mythology surrounding the events that led up to the massacre is that a 19-year-old young man named Dick Rowland, who was a shoeshine boy at the Ingersoll parlor at 3rd and Main, who was, because of Jim Crow segregation, forced to use the bathroom at the Drexel building, also at 3rd and Main, that he got on the elevator, as he often did, with a 17-year-old young white woman who worked the elevator named Sarah Page. And on the way down, after on his way back to work, he allegedly grabbed her. She screamed. A employee from a local clothing store came to her aid. He ran, and thus that was the impetus for a state-sanctioned, city, municipal government-sanctioned mob of white folks creating an invasion. Actually, World War I vets taking the time between the meeting at the courthouse where groups of black men and groups of armed white men interacted around 10:30 p.m. on May 31st, and by 5 a.m. on June 1st, with the whistle blast coming from a brickyard, thousands of white men from both the east and the south, in a very coordinated invasion, staged an assault on 36 to 40 blocks of Black-owned Success, and killing over 300 people and destroying one of the wealthiest, most prosperous communities, Black communities in the country, which had existed from 1906 to 1921. But really what we historians know as truth is that there was a land grab that the white folks from the South really were interested in acquiring the land in North Tulsa for their own means, initially to create sort of a trucking hub. And so that was their goal. And so there were many folks who believed that, the incident between Sarah Page and Dick Rowland was the catalyst. That was an excuse. The land grab was well known. It's well documented. And one of the most interesting things and tragic things about the massacre, of course, in addition to the loss of life, over 300 folks, in addition to, property, homes, banks, businesses, all Black owned, over 600 to 1,000, businesses, 10,000 Black residents displaced, is that loss of generational wealth that you alluded to in your intro, in your open, that we are here at the 101st observation of the massacre, and Black folks own very little in Tulsa. Only 36% of Black folks own their homes in North Tulsa. The mortality rate, the gap in mortality is 11 years. There were hospitals. There were 2 hospitals in Greenwood, in the Greenwood district prior to the massacre. Now there's not one. There's only been a grocery store in North Tulsa built in the last 3 years. And so that generational wealth, that economic divide, the residuals of the massacre in terms of property, equity, access, are very, very alive and very pungent today, even as we, again, are 101 years past the event.
Absolutely. And so, Professor, let me ask you the next question, which is, why don't more people know about this, right? This happened 101 years ago, and this is obviously very prominently in the news last year, and it was news to most people, I would dare say, in America when this was covered last year. Why is that?
Well, you're right, Edward. Sadly, most folks learned about the massacre via the Watchmen series, right? And then wondered, did this really happen? And then, did a little bit of fact finding and, of course, learned that it was actually true. What we need to understand, I think what folks need to understand, is that the state government of Oklahoma, the municipal government of Tulsa, buried this by design and actually threatened Black folks who survived and stayed in Tulsa, actually felt threatened and or ashamed by speaking about it. So many Black folks from generations past just didn't talk about it. It was too traumatic. They had also literally been threatened about speaking about it would cost them their lives, another massacre. And then the state chose to not include this history in Oklahoma history textbooks that are a required course for all 8th and 9th graders, 8th and or 9th graders in the state. And so this history was systematically buried and eliminated and removed from being discussed or taught successfully for almost a century. It's only been in the last 3 to 5 years that this history has been included in Oklahoma history curriculum for high school students at all, right? And so that was by design, right? That was by design. It was the state government, the city government that all said, we're going to bury this, we're going to erase this history. It's a, they did not expect the national stain or shame that this incident would bring to Tulsa and to Oklahoma, and for a time, even a lack of support from not the federal government, but from other entities because of the event. So they buried it, they erased it, they eliminated and successfully remove the incident from the memory of most Oklahomans. Again, for almost a century.
So let me ask this, Professor. Is any of this changing now in the wake of the Centennial, the wide awareness that was raised about it? Has the educational system changed in how it treats this issue? Government officials there, has anything changed now in terms of how the people of Oklahoma and the government of Oklahoma is addressing what happened 101 years ago?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I'll answer that by saying yes and no. Certainly within the last, again, as I mentioned, 3 to 5 years, the state, the state actually paid for the creation of a curriculum that is, approved and taught in middle schools and some high schools in the state now. I believe that curriculum to be very tepid. I don't believe that that curriculum goes far enough really into what I call in my teaching on the Greenwood District, Black excellence over Black pain, right? I don't think there's enough time in that curriculum spent on the fact that Black folks, one generation removed from chattel slavery, and in the face of the apartheid, commonly known as Jim Crow, built by bartering, by working together, by a sense of community and resilience. One of the most thriving Black communities in the nation from 1906 to 1921, actually in many ways not quite predating Harlem, but the Hill District in Pittsburgh, North Philly, even Bronzeville in Chicago, where I lived for quite some time. And what distinguished Greenwood from probably every of those neighborhoods or communities I mentioned, other than Bronzeville on the south side of of Chicago rather, is that Black folks here owned their land, owned their businesses, owned their property, and used that equity to help others build, right? And to help others grow and prosper. And again, in the face of the apartheid that's known as Jim Crow, folks had to work together, keep the resources in the community to take care of their essential needs, right? And from that built a very thriving community, something that we should look back on and study, right? When we think about many of the Black communities that unfortunately exist or that exist in the country today that unfortunately are still dealing with the systemic racism, with the lack of access and equity and quality education today, right? We should be looking at Greenwood as a case study and how we attempt to rebuild. And again, in Greenwood, right, the Greenwood community rebuilt not once but twice, right? There were over 400 businesses back up in 1922. That's a year before Buck Colbert Franklin, B.C. Franklin, the lead attorney, actually won his cases in the state Supreme Court to remove some of the restrictions that Tulsa put on ordinances and zoning for rebuilding. So more rebuilding could flourish and folks could build on their land again, right? And then again, the really the economic height of the district was 1941, where the economy was double that of 1921. So understanding that resilience, right? That resilience, that entrepreneurial spirit of Black folks in Tulsa has not been taught at all, right? Except for those of us here on the ground and some scholars across the country and around the world who are privy to and understand the import of what happened here. But those two, those two moments, rebuilding a year after, and then into the 30s, into the 50s, right? When this district was vibrant again, before urban renewal, or as James Baldwin put it, Negro removal, right? Before model cities, before this I-244 highway essentially created a division that divided the Black community from downtown and South Tulsa. Black folks showed their resilience, showed their spirit by rebuilding not once but twice, right? And it's something that should be taught more and more widely.
Absolutely. Final question. We're almost out of time, so just a quick answer, inshallah, God willing. What can be done? I mean, this happened 101 years ago. You've touched about the long-standing economic harm that was done. The people who experienced the massacre firsthand, for the most part are gone. The perpetrators, for the most part, are gone. Yet the damage of this attack still lingers. The consequences still linger. Is there any discussion or prospect of any sort of economic justice, anything to help the descendants of the people impacted by the massacre, to help the Black community of Tulsa, of Oklahoma, to get back to par, so to speak, if they were ever there at all?
Well, yes. I mean, certainly. Currently, there's a lawsuit that is going to make it to trial by lead attorney Demario Solomon Simmons, the Justice for Greenwood movement, and that is to again to get the survivors, and there are only 3 remaining now, right? 108, 107, and 101 years of age, respectively, to get something for the survivors, the 3 remaining survivors and their descendants. This is the furthest that a trial has made it, other than the initial lawsuit in 2001, I believe. So there's some hope there, that something we're waiting to see how this judge rules on which aspect of the lawsuit has been allowed to go through to go to trial. We don't know the answer to that yet, but there's progress there. But there's also, as Sister Nicole Hannah-Jones, who I had the privilege of hearing speak last night here in Tulsa, put out there, it's certainly within this nation's purview and history to wait it out, right? There are only 3 remaining survivors left, right? The initial lawsuit was ruled out because of the statute of limitations. Now we have 3 remaining survivors, and again, the oldest is 108. Right. And so there's a real, it's not outside of U.S. history for the government to just try and wait it out till these 3 survivors are ancestors and then say there's no one here to directly support or survived or benefited from benefit from this. Right. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, bruh. There's some cause for some muted optimism, because this case has made it further than any of us expected, based on the public nuisance ideas or foundations of the opioid crisis lawsuits, right? That's where Demario sort of came up with this new plan. So we'll see what happens, but it's muted optimism.
Well, look, we look forward to tracking that and getting updates from you. We hope to have you on again, God willing, to discuss this more. But thank you for sharing this history with us, your expertise, and an update on where things stand now. This is an important part of not just Black history in Tulsa, not just Black history, but American history. It's an ugly, despicable part of our history that cannot be erased or forgotten anymore. So we thank you for keeping the memory of those impacted alive. And thanks for being with us today, Professor. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, bro.
Thank you. And we'll toss it back to you, Samana.
Thank you, Edward. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.